Bones and Bobbins podcast is now on Patreon.
Woo!
Would you like access to bonus episodes, digital extras, exclusive merch, and more?
Obviously.
Yes. Then join us in the Curiosity Shop at Bones and Bobbins. Wait, nope. It would be at patreon.com/Bones and Bobbins.
Yeah, but you could find a link at bonesandbobbins.com.
That is true.
We're doing amazing.
Right?
Yes. And do you know why you want to scurry on over to our Patreon?
Why would that be?
It's because your generous support helps make the show happen and will also earn you our very eternal gratitude. And entry into our private Patreon-only Facebook group, which is a goddamn delight.
It is. It absolutely is. There's a lot of insomnia-driven sharing.
In the best possible way.
Yes. And no drama. Just fun.
Nope. It is a chill environment. Except filled with not chill people. But that's cool. In a dusty old shop on a forgotten old street, you'll find two witches with books 3 boxes deep. Next to rusty old needles and faded red thread, you'll come in for yarn, but leave with pigments instead. Whether poisons or patterns, we're always discreet. Where creepy and crafty and morbidity meet.
The Bones and Bobbins podcast.
Welcome to the Bones and Bobbins podcast.
Woo! Would you like access to bonus episodes, digital extras, exclusive merch, and more?
Obviously.
Yes. Then join us in the Curiosity Shop at Bones and Bobbins. Wait, nope. It would be at patreon.com/Bones and Bobbins.
Yeah, but you could find a link at bonesandbobbins.com.
That is true.
We're doing amazing.
Right?
Yes. And do you know why you want to scurry on over to our Patreon?
Why would that be?
It's because your generous support helps make the show happen and will also earn you our very eternal gratitude. And entry into our private Patreon-only Facebook group, which is a goddamn delight.
It is. It absolutely is. There's a lot of insomnia-driven sharing.
In the best possible way.
Yes. And no drama. Just fun.
Nope. It is a chill environment. Except filled with not chill people. But that's cool. Yeah. Oh, God. Anyway. Hello, morbid makers. We are your slightly creepy,
mildly disconcerting,
somewhat sinister,
delightfully discomposed,
opaquely odd,
merrily morbid,
marvelously misanthropic hosts.
And this is Bones and Bobbins, Season 4, Episode 6, Dreadnought, Sink Not.
I'm Haley from Red Handled Scissors and the Very Serious Crafts podcast, and I go by she and her.
And I'm Natalie from Uberdark Designs, an official true crime creative, and my pronouns are she and her.
All right. So my brain's like a Muppet on fire. How are you?
I think I am the Muppet right after the bucket of water's been tossed on it.
All right. So sort of steaming and looking around with some confusion?
Yeah, a little bit. It was a wild holiday weekend.
Oh, yeah, it was a holiday weekend.
It was. When we're recording this, that is.
Yeah, I still consistently manage to not be involved in holidays, even though I, have a house and live in a small town.
Yeah, I mean, we it was, yeah, we weren't really involved. It was a lot of shuffling. I had one offspring attend a national conference down in Iowa, but I had to get them to like the bus stop with the rest of their group in Madison. And the other one was going in the other direction, and there was just scheduling and driving. So much driving.
I hate driving.
In the amount that I drove, just from Thursday through Tuesday, we could have driven to visit you and back, I think.
Well, I think you should have done that.
Right? My money would have been on that, but nobody listens to me. I do have a sad, and that's I was not able to procure lilacs to do the enfleurage.
Well,
because they're in different blooms in different places, and we're like, yes, because the neighbors, we visited part of the entire journey. We visited my parents, and there's a giant lilac bush there. So it's like, we're gonna pick them, like right when we're getting ready to leave, and they had already they'd bloomed and they were gone, and I was like, son of a. So yep. I did not get them, but I am prepared. I have my kit ready to go, and next year, all of the enfleurage will occur.
I mean, it happens. I have now given all of my lilacs a haircut. Okay. So that will either be a really good thing or I will miss a season of blooming. I think I did it fast enough for it to be the correct time. I don't know what I'm doing. It's fine.
I'm going to go with it's all good just because that's a good answer.
Yeah, it's going to have to be because I am very allergic to oak pollen. And Oof. That is just, I live surrounded by woods. And as you may hear, I'm a little bit scratchy.
When you text me about the oak pollen, I had literally just snorted a couple rounds of Flonase.
Yep. A little bump here and there.
A little bump here and there.
Yeah.
One in every room of the house.
Yeah, and I picked now to start my immunotherapy for allergies, which is great. I mean, allergy shots, except it's not a shot. It is sublingual. But
that's easier then.
Yeah, but like, couldn't I have started like 3 months earlier? The answer is yes, I could have if I'd gotten my shit together. Anyway, oh God. So do you know what's happening in my yard right now?
The growing of things?
Among other things, yes. So, I have a mystery that is unfolding, a caper, if you will.
Oh, I love a good caper.
Yeah, so I am not entirely sure what creature is responsible for this, but something keeps digging up, but not eating my strawberry plants.
Oh.
Just like, whoo. It looks like something dove into that particular planting bed and like did a backstroke. And it's happened 3 times now.
And they don't eat it?
No. And
so weird.
They're also right behind the strawberries. I planted poppies. They're also not eating the poppies, although they are digging them up and throwing them around. So, and I mean, those are seedlings, so I have no idea.
So it's something tantrumatic.
Well, Jeremy's theory is squirrels burying things.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. That sounds like it could be a thing.
But like, fuck you. What?
Right?
There are so many places on my property. What the fuck is that?
But if they're smart, then it's already been, recently dug, so the soil's going to be nice and fluffy and easy to climb into.
Sorry, there's something tapping on the wall. And I cannot tell if I have just vibrated something with my incessant movement. Better fucking not be. But yeah. Although I have also rescued a chipmunk from the swimming pool day before yesterday. So maybe I don't know. But I have surrounded all of my strawberry plants not with wood mulch, but with pebble mulching, and just around the plants. And it seems that whatever has been diving into them did do that again last night, but did not unearth my newly surrounded strawberry plants. So it's a mystery.
I fully suspect that by next year at this time you're gonna have some kind of outdoor camera.
We do. We have outdoor security cameras. It's just that we haven't put the one that faces that way up yet. For a good reason. We have some neighborhood cats, and I'm fairly certain that one of them was living in our barn over the winter. And this one's nickname is Chunky Tabby. It is also the one responsible for making the woo sound that really confused me and started the entire horny animals at my house early spring. And so we're going to put the camera in there so I could see where Chunky Tabby was sleeping so I could put a cat bed there. And, didn't get around to doing that. And so, therefore, that camera has not been deployed elsewhere.
That'll happen.
Yeah, I need to get a camera up there, though. Anyway, how are you?
Good. Hey, speaking of horny animals, Happy Pride Month!
Oh, no. I can't argue with it. Fair.
People, if you're listening, vote. Our entire country is attacking.
Yeah, hey, don't be an asshole and protect trans kids. Trans kids. Trans adults.
Yes,
but
trans human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Also, drag is not a fucking crime. It is an art form, and it is wonderful.
Yeah, it's also, super mainstream. Inoffensive old TV shows. Yeah. Mm.
Right, seriously. If it was good enough for that was okay back then.
All I'm thinking is I'm fairly certain I Love Lucy has at least one episode in which Ricky is wearing drag.
Tom Hanks' career started with Bosom Buddies. Wherein he and, I can't remember his name now. And it's going to kill me. They dressed up as women to get an apartment in an all-women's unit in New York because it was cheap.
Oh, I mean, fair enough. At the Barbizon?
Yeah, so they had to sit there and change out from... But they absolutely 100% drag. Just
excellent.
Yeah. My kids grew up going to drag brunch at Hamburger Mary's.
Because it's fun.
It's fun, and it's wonderful, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that, people are so quick to go, oh, let's buy this, look, I have this rainbow shirt and I'm going to come party with you. But yet they're silent when these atrocious laws are being passed that are already affecting lives. So
fuck you guys.
Yeah.
If you happen to be part of it. Mm-hmm. And fuck yeah if you're not.
Exactly.
And you are speaking up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Indeed.
Which which would probably make us maybe take a moment before we dive in to thank all of our Curiosity Shop members over on Patreon.
Yes.
And if you join us right about now in a future podcast, you will get your own special, totally normal, not at all creepy, of course not us, welcome shout out. Like right about here, like right about now, I'd be shouting your name out and praising you for your amazingness.
It's true. It is very true. But since we don't have a new person to shout out, we're going to shout out all of our wonderful current Patreon members.
Yes.
You are the best.
The best.
And we would totally go explore hidden old graveyards in the woods with you.
Absolutely. I'll bring the deet.
Oh, God. Insect life.
And if you want in on this fun, not only do you get some awesome surprises and such, you will get a ginormous backlog of Patreon-only episodes. I think we're coming up on, we're getting ready to record number 63. So
65.
that's a lot of extra. 65. Oh, my goodness. I set up the damn file. But yeah.
Oh, wait, no, I'm wrong. 64.
64?
Yep.
There we go. A lot. Over 60. And that's a lot of extra fun. I'm just saying. There's some surprises in there. There's some guests. There's a lot of cats. Yeah. So do it. Join us.
So before we get started, just so you are seeing what I'm talking about, and listeners, you can do this too. I encourage you to pull up the second and third links for my research materials in the show notes. So one is from War History Online, and the other is the U.S. Naval Institute.
Oh my. So weird.
All right. So today I'm going to tell you about a thing that made me go, what? When I saw the photos, and that is the USS Recruit from 1917 that was a battleship in Union Square, New York City. Yeah. All right.
Sorry about that.
In 1917 photos, Union Square in Manhattan is still weirdly recognizable as the same modern day. I am at 2133. What are you at? Okay, so you just missed the... Oh, it probably happened when you pulled up those links.
That is. Yeah.
And we can count again so you can sync. All right, let me know when you're ready. All right. Hit record.
Seriously, it's like...
And
at first glance, I would have thought it was like an AI thing. Just my brain would not have
That's all right.
computed.
All right.
Like, it's that out of place in thought.
So in 1917 photos, Union Square in Manhattan is still weirdly recognizable as the same modern-day Union Square that I personally know very well. I can see a building that I've been in hundreds of times, that is where a Barnes & Noble happens to preside over the park, which, hot tip, contains public restrooms that don't require you to buy anything, which is a rare gem in the city. So just, put that in your back pocket in case you need it ever. And I can also see the building where the Petco that never, ever, ever has anything in stock that I need lives. And so I could go on in that vein for all of the buildings around Union Square that still exist, but I will spare you. The point is that the Union Square of 1917 is so recognizable to me that looking at the photo feels a bit like Let's try that again. Point is, the Union Square of 1917 is so recognizable to me that looking at the photo feels a bit like landing in Uncanny Valley, or like being a time traveler wandering around my own hometown, just 100 years in the past. And that's probably why seeing a giant fucking Dreadnought battleship sitting smack in the middle of the park in an old photo was all it took to drag me down a serious rabbit hole. And to be clear, when I say Dreadnought battleship, I truly do mean an actual battleship, not just like a model or something. Except Union Square, as some of you may know, is now, and was then, most definitely not a waterway. No. And as far as I could tell from historical maps, unlike much of formerly swampy Lower Manhattan, it didn't even start out as one. So what was the battleship doing there? Yeah. So that brings us to the USS Recruit. In 1916, as World War I raged on the other side of the world, the US was really trying not to get involved. At the time, most Americans were on the side of remaining neutral, and the Wilson administration would continue to follow that policy until Kaiser Wilhelm II made the decision to target neutral merchant ships and vessels, sinking 10 American shipping vessels in 2 months. And that happened in early 1917.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was all over. It wasn't in like the same area. It was like totally normal shipping routes that were supposed to be neutral.
And given
it wasn't just that ships were being sneaky.
Right.
They weren't. Ooh.
And given how long it took to ship things back then, that would fuck the economy. It's
true. Sorry. A cop just drove by, which I'm used... It's because we're talking about New York. Yeah, so because the Kaiser was like, ha, I'm a shink? I'm a shink.
I shink your battleship.
I'm going to shink your battleship. Since the Kaiser decided that he was going to go ahead and sink 10 American merchant ships, suddenly the U.S. with ships under attack, was forced to enter the war that it had tried to steer clear of.
So he fucked around and found out.
He fucked around and found out. And I guess he must have, like, you don't do that just to be a dick. Like, he must have wanted to goad the U.S. into the war, but that also seems kind of dumb to me. Right. But I guess the U.S. at that point was not known as the military power it would be known as. So maybe they did just elect to fuck around and find out. I'm not sure. So when the U.S. entered the war in 1917, it was on the heels of disappointingly low 1916 Navy recruitment numbers in New York City. And to put that in context, the goal was 2,000 new recruits that year, but the city only delivered 900.
Ooh,
so not great.
Yeah.
And embarrassed by that, then Mayor John P. Mitchell, who I have never heard of in my life, so I guess he wasn't that exciting, under the direction of the Mayor's Committee on National Defense, came up with an idea to attract much more attention to the Navy by way of an extremely New York City spectacle. Why not build a battleship in the middle of Union Square?
I could think of a few reasons, but
I have to tell you, John P. Mitchell does not care about your opinion.
Figures.
But, yeah. So the ship's designers, Don Barber and Jules Guerin, based the vessel loosely on the Navy's battleship Maine. And the USS Recruit was launched on the 30th of May, 1917, just 7 weeks after the United States entered World War I. Wow. Which, like, holy shit.
That's quick.
That's fast.
Right?
And I'm not sure if it was already in the works. I mean, I assume
it almost had to be, because if you're that's a lot of materials to source.
It's New York City, though.
Yeah.
And the Pine Barrens are upstate.
Oh,
true. But it's one of those things where I assume that the U.S. government was nervously eyeing the rest of the world and planned on ramping up recruitment goals anyway. So I don't know. It may have been absurdly fast. It may also have been already in the works. None of my research gave me exact dates for that. But since the 2016 numbers were the thing that spurred it, and it launched in May, that is pretty fast.
It is.
Yep. Anyway, so here is what she was working with. You may be sitting here wondering to yourself, what does a battleship in Union Square actually look like? Well, I can tell you. Because space was at a premium even in 1917 Manhattan, the USS Recruit was 250 feet long with a beam, which is the width at the widest part of the boat, because research. So the beam was 40 feet, making her half the size of a World War I era Nevada-class super Dreadnought battleship.
Wow.
Dun, dun, dun. Which sounds terrifying to me. 10 out of 10 for the name. Well done. Yep. So, yep. She is, in fact, a super Dreadnought battleship.
She's mighty. Just letting it all hang out.
Yeah. She's a wood.
So.
All right, I'm done. Muppet brain.
Sorry, my fault.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to very, very quickly go over two things that are going to make World War I buffs scream at me from the background, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did not have time to go down every single one of these rabbit holes. But if I get something spectacularly wrong, send me a DM and I will correct it in a future update and, add it to the show notes or whatever. So, a Nevada-class battleship. Without digging too deeply into the details, like I said, a Nevada-class battleship was a 1910s armored ship that was designed for long-range engagements, not like the up-close shooting cannons at each other that previous warfare had included. And it paved the way for a future class of strategically armored ships. And that just meant that these Nevada-class battleships weren't fully armored. They were armored in the places most likely to sustain hits from the actual firepower that they would be expecting. Mm-hmm. So the ship was lighter because it was called all or nothing armor. And the places that were likely to get hit had extremely thick armor. And the rest of the ship didn't, making it more easily maneuverable in the water. And now we come to Dreadnought. Dreadnought is a really good name.
It is.
Yeah. And there are many intricacies of battleship classifications and designs that are well beyond me. But from what I understand, a Dreadnought battleship had what was called an all-big gun armament scheme, which was basically large caliber guns at a uniform size, so all of the ammunition for all of the guns would fit all of the guns.
That's smart.
Yeah. And these ships also had steam turbine propulsion, which was not the case for earlier ships. And the goal, it would seem to me, was getting a combination of the most protection, the most speed, and the most firepower bang for your buck. Because obviously they had to make these ships cost effective to mass manufacture, but they also had to make them fit for modern warfare. And so the Dreadnought and Super Dreadnought, which is super. All right. Anyway, the thing about this particularly successful publicity stunt that was, to onlookers and to those directly involved in the day-to-day of the project, was its success in being fully functional and authentic looking. And so the USS Recruit was manned around the clock by sailors from the Newport training station. She was an actual training ship. She was fitted with a wireless station, full officers' quarters, doctors' quarters, cabins, medical exam rooms for recruits. Her armament matched those of the Nevada-class ships, just in wood. 3 twin turrets with 6 faux 14-inch guns, excuse me, as the main battery, and 10 5-inch guns in the casements, which I believe is what makes it the Super Dreadnought, because it has the 2 different kinds for different things. Plus 2 1-pound saluting gun replicas. And she also had a conning tower. Conning tower? I'm not really sure. And 2 high cage masts. And a fake smokestack that really pulled all of it together. Hold on just a second.
Gotta have that smokestack.
Well, I happen to know that there are steam tunnels in that area that still provide steam heat to customers in Manhattan. Like, the city has, like, you would have electric gas. You could also have steam heat.
That's awesome.
So I feel like they could have made that thing smoke. Maybe they did. I don't know.
You'd think, if you're going through all that trouble.
It was heated by gas, though.
Okay.
Just fun fact. All right. So anyway, after it was built, eventually the Women's Reserve Camouflage Corps, who we have met before, painted the USS Recruit with dazzle camouflage in pink, green, blue, black, and white geometric patterns to discourage torpedo attacks. From the subway station, maybe?
I mean, you're
because that was there. That was in fact
Are there any
right
color
there.
photos of that, or no? It's just black and white, right?
I don't think that was a thing.
That sucks, because I bet you that was that would have been just absolutely something to see a color.
Quite something, right? Yeah, I mean, imagine like a psychedelic boat in the middle of Union Square.
Dazzle.
Fully manned.
Is that from where the YMCA song came from?
It came from a lot of things, but I believe that was
people,
in Greenwich Village.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess they were concerned about German torpedo attacks from the subway. Fine. The land ship had a 36-piece band and 40 or 55, depending on the source, crew members, which apparently were not the same people, because the ship reportedly maintained a full crew of about 80 men.
Okay.
Yep. And I think that sort of gives you an idea of how large this was.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we say that it was half the size of the ship that it was modeled after.
It's still friggin' huge.
But there are 80 people.
Right.
Living and working. Like, they aren't going home. They are stationed on this ship.
Yeah.
And so it was a working ship surrounded by skyscrapers. And it was specifically designed, like I said, for Navy and also Marine recruitment, although the Marines do not seem to be mentioned in any of the other research that I have been in, except to say that recruitment happened. So I guess the Navy was also recruiting. And it also hosted Liberty Bond drives and social events.
Okay.
And one of the biggest jobs that the recruit had was to operate a fully functioning naval ship, even though it was on land. So sailors training there followed a normal routine, beginning their day at 0600 hours, scrubbing the decks, doing laundry, like in the open on the decks,
Nice.
conducting drills, attending classes, and standing guard. And these soldiers who were standing guard were able to interact with the public and answer questions about life aboard the ship, which is kind of cool.
I think it's pretty fun.
Like, that was part of the job. And public tours were also offered, allowing people to walk around the vessel and see the activities performed by the sailors who were literally living their lives as sailors on a ship. And they could also, at that time, ask questions of the sailors and ask about joining the Navy. And at night, and at night, and I think this is particularly cool, this may be because I spent almost 20 years living in this area sort of thing, but there's something really magical about things in New York lit up at night.
Oh, definitely.
And at night, the ship was lit up by searchlights and its own ship lights. So it glowed in Union Square.
That must be amazing.
I mean, these were just the normal lights that the boats would have, the normal searchlights and normal lighting on the boats, but in Union Square, like, cool.
Right, yeah.
That must have been a hell of a thing, especially when it had the camouflage.
The dazzle camouflage.
Yep. Oof. And early photos of it, I don't know what color it was. I assume gray, but perhaps not gray. But it was a solid, like, normal battleship color. But, wow. That must have been. In both forms, it must have been awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
So in addition to recruitment, the USS Recruit also hosted social events to draw attention to and raise funds for the war effort, which included vaudeville performances, dances, and boxing matches. I want to go to a dance with sailors on the USS Recruit in Union Square, please. It's Fleet Week right now, I think. Or maybe it was... I guess, no, Fleet Week was last week because it's Memorial Day weekend. But,
that must have been truly magical.
Oh. I mean, Fleet Week is truly magical, if you ask me. Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah.
So many tight butts and tight pants. Just saying. Anyway, so it worked. The end result in the 3 years that she was on duty was that recruitment rates in New York City jumped 25-fold to more than 2,500 people.
Wow.
So 2,500 being 25,000.
Holy shit.
25,900 people in 1916. And it jumped 25-fold. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so apparently sailors with tight butts and tight pants was popular then too.
I don't think it's ever not been popular.
No.
Could be wrong on that.
The uniforms haven't changed much.
No, they really haven't.
No. So, unfortunately, or I suppose fortunately for the people who enjoy the park today,
yes,
it isn't there anymore. And the decommissioning of the ship happened in 1920 as the ship's band played the Star-Spangled Banner as the colors were lowered to the deck.
Aww.
Yep. And this was interesting to me and might just be a thing that stood out in my autism brain. But the colors that it was lowering included its commission flag. So it was a fully commissioned battleship.
Oh.
which is cool.
That is cool.
To me. Yep. And initially there were plans for her to be reassembled on Coney Island in Brooklyn, where she was supposed to be a permanent Navy recruitment station, but that never happened. It's not entirely clear why that was, but the New York Times seems to think that it was probably because the cost of moving the ship ended up being greater than its actual value. And so when the ship was dismantled, the materials were probably repurposed. There simply isn't more information than that, and I feel like there should have been.
Yeah.
But, I mean, somebody's got to know. There are for sure at least World War II era recruitment stations that exist around the city. I feel like they should have like some paperwork somewhere. But honestly, you never know. New York is nothing if not surprising.
That is true.
And it's totally possible that there's a chunk of that ship hanging out in someone's loft in Williamsburg.
That would be so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, also could be in a dank old basement of a bar in the Village, like, say, Marie's Crisis. There's a bunch of stuff downstairs at Marie's Crisis. I don't know what any of it is, except there are bathrooms down there. But
you never know.
Yeah, so it would also not surprise me if some of it was at the bottom of the Gowanus Canal, like, and New York people, I do not know how many or how much those references are New York specifically meaningful or general public meaningful, but let's just say it wouldn't be strange.
Indeed.
Yep. So that is the USS Recruit, specifically the one from 1917. I believe there is still, even currently, a USS Recruit.
That's amazing.
Yep. And I believe USS is United States ship.
I think so, too.
Because HMS is Her Majesty's ship. So
that tracks.
Yep. Anyway, so there we go.
You taught us about a ship that couldn't sink, basically because it's on land. I mean,
I guess it could have sank into the subway tunnel.
Oh, that's true. Today, I'm going to talk about the fucking amazing Unsinkable Molly Brown.
Ba-ba-ba.
So odds are you have definitely heard her name before, and odds are you have heard many a tall tale that wasn't true. But the truth... Damn it! Well, but here's the thing. The truths of her life are actually much, much cooler.
All right.
So much of what we think we know about Margaret... Oh, yeah, that's right. Her name was Margaret. She never went by Molly. Comes from the larger-than-life stories that were created after her death in 1932.
Where is she from? Because Molly, I believe, was a possibly derogatory slang word.
She was given the nickname Molly, from like the media, and it was just I think they thought Molly was just a more, fun name. I don't know. She's from Missouri, from Hannibal, Missouri.
Oh, I mean, I think that Ireland is.
She's from. She's Irish.
Well, then I think that might have just been a common thing to refer to Irish women.
That makes sense.
Anyway. If that is offensive, I'm sorry. And if I'm completely wrong, I'm also sorry. I'm just a squirrel on a treadmill.
So some of these myths are floated, like her floating down the Mississippi River as a baby, possibly even being rescued by Mark Twain himself.
I want that to be true.
Right? To using a Colt gun to command her Titanic lifeboat. Yeah, many tales spun. After her death, the story of Margaret Brown, though it's her life is actually well documented, but immediately began to transform as a culture, I guess, searching for, like, the last of the great Western stories.
Yeah.
But they set her up as an uneducated, kind of unaccepted, raw kind of figure. And the origins of this trend seems to start about a year after Margaret's death. Gene Fowler, who is known as a, quote, wisecracking Denver reporter known for his ability to spice up a story, wrote about the life of Molly.
There we are.
Yep, Molly, quote, Brown. Influenced by the Rocky Mountain Times obituary, Fowler helped create much of the myth that we know today. He wrote that she was born 2 months early during a tornado and that her impoverished father was a drunkard.
Me too!
Yeah, but neither one of those is actually true.
I mean, I wasn't born in the middle of a tornado, I guess.
So he also wrote that she couldn't read or write, and his story became the basis for the play written by Richard Morris and Meredith Willson, The Unsinkable Molly Brown. Hence the name. But I'm going to take some time to set the record straight because, again, she's far more fucking incredible. Like, I want somebody to do an actual movie on her, like her actual life. So Margaret Tobin Brown was born to Irish immigrants, John and Johanna Tobin, in 1867 in Hannibal, Missouri. She was one of 6 children, 2 of whom were from her each parent's previous marriages. Their respective spouses both died, and then they married each other. So the Tobins were part of that wave of immigration following the first period of industrialization in America. Mm-hmm. Hannibal, believe it or not, was a diverse community where Margaret was exposed to a variety of people and interests, and her parents found a group of like-minded Irish Catholic immigrants who supported both freedom and equality. Now, usually, you know me and my Catholics, but the Tobins got it right. Like, they had incredibly progressive views on everything. And they valued education even for their daughters, which was not at all popular at the time. Margaret attended a private school where she was taught by her aunt until about the age of 13. She graduated from the 8th grade. And it was the lessons that, like, she learned from her parents. Like, they drove her for personal growth and a commitment into participating in, like, the world around her, like, be part of the world, that actually created the legend that she would become. So Margaret also encountered struggles of the laboring class because they were poor. And when she graduated, she began working at a factory. I think it was a tobacco factory at the age of 13. Long days, low wages, instability, that pretty much characterized many in her community, including her father, and one of her dreams was to move west. Margaret and her brother Daniel actually followed those dreams and the national chain of migration, and they moved to Leadville, Colorado. Now, in Leadville, Margaret began working at a local department store, and it was there around the spring of 1886 that she met James Joseph, otherwise known as JJ Brown, a local mining foreman. After a brief courtship, they were married on September 1st, 1886, and it was ultimately a love match for her.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes. Quote, I wanted a rich man, but I loved Jim Brown, she said of her husband. I thought about how I wanted comfort for my father and how I determined to stay single until a man presented himself who could give the tired old man the things that I longed for him. Jim was as poor as we were and had no better chance in life. I struggled hard with myself in those days. I loved Jim, but he was poor. Finally, I decided that I was better off with a poor man whom I loved than a wealthy one whose money had attracted me. So I married Jim Brown.
All right.
Right? Soon after marrying, they moved into a 2-room cabin in Stumptown, Colorado, which was closer to the mines where JJ was a foreman at. Margaret began taking reading and literature classes with a tutor. And in August of 1887, the couple welcomed their first child, Lawrence, known as Larry. Less than 2 years later, in July of 1889, out popped Catherine, known as Helen, which I do not understand, but okay, was born. By then, they had relocated to 322 West 7th Street in Leadville, and by all accounts, they were living a comfortable... But
Leadville.
Right? They were living a comfortable but modest life. So, not too bad, but also not exactly, flush. At that time, Margaret worked in soup kitchens to help local mining families, and she's even believed to have been involved in the Colorado chapter of the National American Women's Suffrage Association.
Cool.
Their lives changed, though, in 1893, and in a way that they never would have expected. So JJ actually unearthed a new way of retrieving gold from the bottom of the Little Johnny mine, which was owned by the Ibex Mining Company. Thanks to his discovery, JJ was giving 12,500 shares in Ibex and a place on the company's board of directors, which instantly made him a very, very rich man. Right? Manifestation. In 1894, the Browns bought a $30,000 Victorian mansion, which in today's money would be $931,000, in Denver, which is known as the Molly Brown House. And I have a link in the show notes where you can take a tour of it, and it's beautiful. And in 1897, they built a summer house, a vocal lodge in southwest Denver near Bear Creek, which gave the family even more social opportunities. Margaret became a chapter of the Denver Women's Club, whose mission was the improvement of women's lives by continuing education and philanthropy. She was still trying to adjust to the trappings of a society lady. So she became, and I think she just used it actually as, I think she just loved to learn. I think she really did. But she basically took that as an opportunity to become well immersed in the arts. She became fluent in French, German, Italian, and Russian.
Wow.
Right. She co-founded a branch in Denver of the Alliance Française to promote her love of French culture, and she lobbied for women's right to vote. The Browns gave parties were many super socialites from Denver attended, but she was unable to gain entry into the most elite group, the Sacred 36, which I will be doing in another episode. But basically, they attended exclusive bridge parties and had dinners held by Louise Sneed Hill, whom Brown referred to as the snobbiest woman in Denver. JJ, however, was not interested in the social life that Brown enjoyed, and they began to drift apart. Which, that wording sounds bad, but I don't believe that I think she used the socialness to grow her as a character, but also to use those connections to increase her philanthropy and being able to, actually benefit the community around her. Not just to, sit around and drink tea and gossip. Right. After 23 years of marriage, Margaret and JJ privately signed a separation agreement in 1909. She received a $700 monthly allowance, which is equivalent to $23,000, to continue her travels and her political work. Spoiler alert, they actually never got divorced. They were just legally separated and just fine for the rest of their lives. Brown assisted in fundraising for the Denver's Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, which was completed in 1911. She also worked with Judge Ben Lindsay to help destitute children and she literally helped establish one of the United States' first juvenile courts.
Oh.
Right?
Huh.
Much more interesting than being born in the middle of a tornado, to me.
Yeah.
Brown spent the first months of 1912 in Paris visiting her daughter until she received word from Denver that her eldest grandchild, Lawrence Palmer Brown Jr., was seriously ill. So she immediately booked passage on the first available liner leaving for New York, the RMS Titanic.
Oh, great.
Yeah, originally her daughter Helen was supposed to come with her, but Helen, who was studying at the Sorbonne, decided to take a side trip to London with friends. So Brown boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger on the evening of April 10th. You may or may not know this, but the Titanic sank early on April 15th, 1912, at around...
Yeah, don't say.
at around 2:20 a.m., after striking an iceberg at around 11:40 the previous night. Now, Brown helped other people board the lifeboats. And when I say that, I mean she was physically forced by two men to abandon the ship and get on the sixth lifeboat. More than 1,500 people aboard this so-called unsinkable ship of Titanic perished. There were a total of 2,224 people on the ship in total. After her death in 1932, Brown was called Molly Brown and the Unsinkable Mrs. Brown by authors because she helped in the ship's evacuation. She also took an oar herself in the lifeboat to row, and she urged lifeboat crew to go back and save more passengers. She also had...
Seems like a badass.
She had other passengers take oars and start rowing to keep warm. She used some of her own clothing to help people that were freezing. Her urgings were met with opposition from Quartermaster Robert Hitchens, which was the crewman in charge of Lifeboat 6, because he was fearful that they were about going back because he didn't want the lifeboat to be pulled down due to suction or water would swamp the boat in an effort. And also, he was worried about food and all that stuff because more mouths to feed and everything. They didn't know how long they were going to be in the water.
Right.
Apparently, after several attempts to urge Hitchens to turn back, Brown literally threatened to throw him overboard. But he still stood his ground. Now, upon being rescued by the ship RMS Carpathia, Brown proceeded to organize a committee with other first-class survivors, and that committee worked to secure basic necessities for the second and third class survivors and even performed informal counseling, which...
Oh, I didn't even know that happened.
Yeah. Isn't she amazing? So her fierce reputation, caught like wildfire, and Margaret used it as a means to fuel her philanthropic efforts. In 1914, 6 years before the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote, Brown actually ran for Colorado's U.S. Senate seat, but she ended her campaign to serve abroad as the director for the American Committee for Devastated France during World War I. For her work organizing female ambulance drivers, nurses, and food distributors, Brown was awarded the French Legion of Honor in 1932. And in 1914, she contributed to the miners and their families during the 1914 coal mine disaster, and she organized the International Women's Rights Conference that year, which was held in Newport, Rhode Island. J.J. Brown sadly passed away September 5th, 1922. Margaret told newspapers that although she had met royalty and other great people around the world, quote, "I have never met a finer, bigger, more worthwhile man than J.J. Brown." So J.J. left vast yet complicated real estate, mining, and stock holdings. It is literally unknown to the Browns and their lawyers how much was left in the estate. Prior to J.J.'s death, he had transferred a large amount of money to his children. Their children were also unaware of how much money Margaret had, but were displeased at the large amounts she spent on charity. Fuck them. Margaret and her children fought in court for 6 years to settle the estate. During the last years of her life, Brown was an actress. She died in her sleep at 10:55 p.m. on October 26, 1932, at the age of 65 in New York City's Barbizon Hotel. Subsequent autopsy revealed a brain tumor. She was buried next to JJ at St. Bridget's Cemetery, now known as the Cemetery of the Holy Rood in Westbury, New York, which I have attached a link to view their tombstone, following a small ceremony on October 31st, 1932, attended by close friends and family, where there was singing, but no eulogy. Also, I want to throw in there that one of Margaret liked to keep fit, and the way that she chose to keep fit was boxing.
Hey, she could have been a boxer on the USS Recruit.
So that is...
I would have paid to see that.
Right? So that is the actual life of Miss Margaret, a.k.a. the Unsinkable Molly Brown.
Oh, wow.
Isn't
that
amazing?
Is so much more interesting than the lore.
Right? She was like genuinely just a badass and a decent woman, you know? Like just...
Sounds like it.
Yeah, like she... Yeah, she was feisty. She used her money for good. She used her time for good. She taught her children how to do the same thing. She lived as a good example. Even, you know, even just being separated and still speaking so fondly of her husband, like, it just, I don't know. I think it's all pretty cool.
I do too. She sounds like a very, very modern woman.
Right.
In the best possible way.
And all the things that she did is so much more exciting than they've watered her down to be. So I hope someday that somebody also sets the record straight with a movie about her, because I think it would be amazing and I would actually watch.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So, I think that brings us to the weekly
worst
way to die.
Oh.
So what you got?
Subway torpedo.
Yes, that would indeed suck. I'm going with not being unsinkable.
Yeah, I feel like going down with the Titanic is like a perennial worst way to die.
Yeah.
Man.
That would suck. Yeah. So, hey, do you want to be spooky internet friends?
Obviously.
Well, you can find us at Bones and Bobbins on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of the social medias, or just pop on over to bonesandbobbins.com.
I'm on the wrong page. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast, because it pleases the internet gremlins and also the gremlins inside my brain. And that's how we show up in recommendations, so that other morbid souls can find us.
Bring forth the morbid souls.
Yes.
And on that note, let us leave you with some advice that you should never forget. Lock your doors.
And don't run with scissors.
Or swim with them.
No. I mean, unless you, like, need to cut yourself loose from something.
Yeah, but I feel like they'd weigh it down and might look at accidentally stab myself, you know?
Okay, leave them.
Each episode of the Bones and Bobbins podcast is written and researched by Haley Pearson Cox and Natalie Hoyce. Our music was composed by Loyalty Freak Music. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bones and Bobbins. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, or check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts so you won't miss a minute of our strange and creepy content.